All right, so I just want to remind you on Vanguard's cautious 10-year investment projections. All right, so I'm just telling you right now, before we get too cocky, my MAGA friends, all right, and I'm saying that with all love and respect, but before we get too cocky, I'm just going to go back to Vanguard's investment projections and say, what if they're right? All right, and I'm not saying they're going to be right. I don't know. In fact, we can look right here to see what they were. And this is 2014, and you can see what they're anticipating for their own. And you can say, oh, they were wrong then. You can see right here, the U.S. bonds in 2000. Again, it's 2014. They expected the 10-year rate return of U.S. bonds could be about 2.5% with a median. All right, so median return on U.S. bonds is about 2.5. What did actually the bond market do? Well, let's take a look. BND averaged 2.05. So Vanguard is pretty close there, actually. I'm surprised by that. I thought, U.S. bonds right there. BND averaged compound annual growth rate of 2.05. We're right there. All right, so Vanguard, good job. I mean, they're off. I mean, 2.05 to a 2.5 is, that's 45 basis points. But, actually, if you look at it that way, 0.45 divided by, what do they say, 2.5 roughly. Yeah, that's 20% off. That's still pretty good, though. I'm pleasantly surprised to hear that. Anyway, so, and this is both are nominal returns, sorry, not net of inflation, because inflation isn't taken out of that 2.05. Be that as it may, that's Vanguard's pretty close there. Now let's look at stocks. So it's going to get, again, this 2014. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come back to see what they're saying in 2025 to remind you that we just got to be careful. We got to be careful here. So let's see what we got. So in 2014, 10-year annualized return, they expected the median rate of return of U.S. equities, it's about 7% or so. Again, median means half the time we have more, half the time we have less. With the high end being, what's that, 18? That's a volatility, excuse me. That's a volatility right there. The high end being 18, the low end being -4. So quite a wide range, but within, basically, that's probably 25 to 75% right there. Basically 2 to 12% is kind of what they're thinking. But again, the median would be about 6 to 7. So let's, instead of going BND, let's look at, hey, puppy. Let's look at, let's get rid of BND. Buddy. My friend. Let's see what we got. I think it's like 15 and a quarter or something like that. 12.45. So Vanguard is basically half of what it was. And you can't, no one knew. You can't blame him for that. But anyway, so why I'm saying that is that, Vanguard could be wrong. But remember, I'm from an island. I was raised on an island 3 miles off the coast of Portland, Maine. All right. So for the first, till I was in 6th grade, we hardly ever got off the island, even though there was only 400 or 500 of us in the wintertime. Our school was there. We would go play baseball and basketball on occasion, but we hardly ever got off the island. Going to this Portland was a big deal for us island kids. All right, so inherently, I'm very cautious and pessimistic, because if you're from Maine, you can't help but be cautious and pessimistic, just FYI. So I'm coming at it from a cautious, pessimistic perspective. If we can make it happen with a low expected rate of return, if we are wrong, then more power to us. You see what I'm saying? But if we're relying on a high expected return and we're wrong, then it sucks to be you. So we don't want to do that. So this is why I like using the Vanguard models, man, because the Vanguard models are somewhat conservative. They just are. So let's check. Again, this is from, we're going to revisit this, July 2025. All right. The last time we looked at this was 5 months ago or something like that. They're still giving us about, this is U.S. equities, the next 10 years, they're still giving us about a 4 point, we'll just say 5% expected rate of return. What was it back then? About this 5 right there, about 7% expected rate of return. That makes sense. They're expecting we'd have lower expected rate of returns because the markets have done so well the last 10 years, really 15. And you can see right here, they're expecting the global markets to give us 6.5, so about 150 basis points more than the U.S. markets, maybe. They're expecting value to be twice that of U.S. growth. We'll see. I don't know. Aggregate bonds, they're expecting a 4.2 to 5.2. I tend to agree with that. I tend to agree with all. I think this is a little on the low end. I mean, if we look at what Bogle says, let me see if I can't. I get my dogs barking. Yeah. Every time I do a video, the dogs start barking. They're like, Dad, I want you to look at me. Let's see Bogle's thing, because Bogle, the founder of Vanguard, the legend, who died with a net worth of only $80 million. I know $80 million seems like a lot of money, but for how much he saved investors is crazy. So we're gonna look at his book. And COVID. I'm sneezing all the time. I gotta stop sniffing. You know what I'm saying? Gotta stop sniffing. All right. So this is Bogle, signed by my man JB. That's what I used to call him. Say JB. What's up, Josh? So we're gonna see what Bogle said about. Oh man, I'm not gonna go find it. Oh jeez, Louise and blue cheese. Yeah, I'm not gonna go find it. But anyways, Bogle's thoughts on stock market returns were dividends plus earnings yields, earnings growth plus dividend yields, and then you say plus or minus concentration or expansion of PE ratios. All right, right here. I think we got it right here. Hold tight. Here's JB, page 40 of his book, Common Sense on Mutual Funds. Like my man, legend. He says, if there is no change in the price to earnings ratios, the total return on stocks depends almost entirely on the initial dividend yield, What are you buying? What's the dividend yield for what you purchased today? It doesn't matter what it is 5, 10, 15 years from now. The dividend yield is what you pay today, what's called a yield to cost. The initial, so again, the total return on stocks depends almost entirely on the initial dividend yield and the rate of earnings growth. If there's no change in PE ratios. Change the PE ratios, just again, how much someone is willing to pay for a dollar of earnings. That's it. That's what Bogle said. So if we look at Vanguard, and Vanguard is Bogle's boy or Bogle's kid, they say we don't expect much earnings growth necessarily, and we don't have a big dividend yield right now. So that's where we're going to get these return projections. The only way you get increased return projections is that people are willing to pay more for $1 of earnings than they did previously. Now, given where the market valuations are now, you can't expect that. If anything, you expect a contraction of PE ratios. Now, people will say, but Josh, stock buybacks. Well, stock buybacks, yeah, I get it. But that's part of earnings. Earnings growth. Not just fact. Earnings growth per share. If the shares are reduced, the earnings growth. If you have I don't know, a dollar of earnings you have $1 of earnings for one share, right? $1 of earnings for one share. That means every share has $1 of earnings. Now you reduce the shares by half. You still have the $1 of earnings because you stop buybacks. Now you have $1 of earnings for every half share. That means your earnings are growing relative to your shares. That's just a fact. And I know it's not a very good example. That's how it works, man. You stop buybacks, you're reducing the amount of shares out there, which is inherently increasing your earnings per share. Earnings growth, dividend price to earnings ratio, earnings per share. What's your earnings per share? That's what's happening here. So in this case, you had $1 of earnings per share. Now you get $1, well, basically $2 of earnings per share because you have $1 of earnings in one half a share. I guess I'm not explaining that very well, but always remember EPS, earnings per share. And so that would be, so stock buybacks would be included in EPS, and earnings growth is part of EPS, earnings per share. All right, so now we got dividend yield, earnings growth, EPS, and then you have contraction of the PE ratio or expansion. And where we are today is certainly not in a low PE ratio time. Now, I absolutely could be wrong, 100%. I'm just trying to say to people, man, if you can make it work on a lower rate of return expectations, dude, the freaking world's your oyster, man. Just don't forget that, all right? And I mean, Vanguard could be wrong. I just showed you. They were way off in 2014. And I guess I could go back to 2000. I don't know if they had the projections in 2004. I don't know. But at the end of the day, dude, if you can make it work on a lower projections, you're gonna get. All right, God bless. Love your thoughts. Smash that like button. Don't forget to subscribe, you crazy people out there. We'll see you.